Our top story this morning, the man caught on surveillance footage ambushing a Philadelphia officer in a squad car says he acted, quote, in the name of Islam. This as President Obama announced yet another anti-terrorism task force to fight back against online ISIS propaganda. Is that enough? Here to tell us is the founder and president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. Dr. Jasser, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks for coming on.
Good to be with you, Tucker.
We're getting reports that the perpetrator in this case, may have been converted to the strain of Islam in prison. If so, he won't be the first Islamic extremist in the United States to have that experience. Do we have a problem in American prisons with this strain of Islam?
Oh, absolutely. We have a problem where we have organized Islam, the Islamists basically controlling the narrative, which we see in prisons, we see in some of the mosques, and our government, our Homeland Security has been in a state of surrender, and we continue to chase our tails because even on the day, it's almost Orwellian, Tucker, that on the day that this happened yesterday with a guy declaring allegiance to the state of Islam, shooting a police officer 13 times, our president comes out, says he wants to counter violent extremism in a task force. Just the same thing, not countering violent Islamism. We had the Chattanooga shooter that posted a few days earlier that he was going to establish the state of Islam. The shooting of the officer in the Ottawa Parliament, the beheading of Lee Rigby in London, which was another attack on an officer, Fort Hood, on and on. It's becoming more and more. Why? Because we're not treating the root causes, and
yes.
Our president, people like the mayor of Philadelphia, who, by the way, seems like he's auditioning for the Baghdad Bob mayor for a city in Saudi Arabia, because the narrative is like, oh, we're not addressing Islam. Well, sure, it's not my Islam, but if our government is going to get to the root cause, which we're currently surrendering to, which is political Islam and Islamo-patriotism,
right,
we have to start to follow the ideas like this gentleman manifested.
So, I mean, guys like this, the mayor of Philadelphia, I guess assume that people are going to blame all Muslims. I've never seen any evidence of that. But they shut down the conversation immediately. No, don't talk about Islam. Why is that?
Well, it's laziness, it's ignorance, it is the fact that the current advisors, I mean, this mayor signed a pledge against Islamophobia coming from the Arab American Institute and other apologists who refused to allow us to address the reforms necessary in the Muslim reform movement, that we say, you know what, we as Muslims demand that we be given a platform so that we can reform the ideas of not only the Islamic State, but all Islamists, be it the Muslim Brotherhood. This guy didn't just wear Muslim garb, Tucker, he wore Salafi garb. The garb that is hyper-radical, hyper-Islamist, that tells you that, you know what, these guys are headed towards a fundamentalism that is ripe for being on that conveyor belt towards ISIS, and rather than this broad net, we should be narrowing our nets to identify individuals like this. He traveled to Egypt, traveled to Saudi Arabia, then was arrested on terrorist charges in 2013, and, oh, we weren't monitoring him. It's because of the political correctness of not addressing this ideology.
Well, so you saw in Cologne, Germany over New Year's and really throughout Europe mass sexual assaults committed apparently by migrants from Syria and Afghanistan. How should Europe be responding to this?
We should, again, they should be addressing the fact that these migrants, yes, even families like mine in Syria are trying to seek freedom, but within them is a culture of misogyny, culture of rape. They don't bring with them values of Western identification of the equality of men and women. They objectify and have this honor culture in which they just went around in gangs. This was coordinated because they completely detest the land of war, which they are calling not the land of Islam, these gangs of men. And by the way, this is January 9th now. This happened on New Year's Eve. There was a conspiracy of silence to even talk about it from police and media because they didn't want to offend the Muslim minorities. It's just absurd, and that's why this is happening.
They must drive reformers like you crazy. I know it does. I'm sorry. Thanks for coming on this morning. Zuhdi Jasser.